endocrine system, which is what we call the hormone system, all hormones, interwork together constantly to make us work like a well-oiled machine. So hormones, think of hormones as messengers and keys. So they are sent from different glands throughout our body to do specific informational requests, you could say, to different organs in the body that run different systems in the body. Now, when I talk about systems, that would be like the sleep system, or the sexual organ system, or the digestive system and appetite system, or the metabolism system, digestive system I mentioned. So these systems, of course, work with timings through the day in a circadian day, and our brain and nervous system and endocrine system, which is what we call the hormone system, all hormones, interwork together constantly to make us work like a well-oiled machine from sun up till sundown and right through the night. So there's a big kind of overview of what we mean by hormones. Now, after the age of about 28, hormones start to go down. We peak around 28 to 30, unfortunately, and every year after that, the production of the potency of our hormones starts to decline. And for women in midlife around menopause, it's even more dramatic because the hormones that used to get produced through the ovaries move to the adrenal glands. And then that shift of especially the sex hormones to the adrenal glands can get compromised by the other hormones that get produced from the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are little walnut-sized glands that sit on top of our kidneys, and they produce on the outside of the material of that gland adrenaline, epinephrine, our fight, flight, and freeze hormone, and then cortisol. And they also produce inside them DHEA, which is a big long word shortened into 4 letters that is the precursor to all of our sex hormones, male and female. Okay. And they also produce DHEA. Then they also produce the sex hormones, testosterone, the 3 estrogens, and progesterone. Now, let's go to the sex hormones first, because that's when we think hormones, that's the big ones. And I want to tell you that I just had my hormones tested about 2 months ago now, and I found that my cortisol levels, which is an important hormone for many, many functions in the body, were a little bit out of whack, which meant that my adrenal glands had been overtaxed through basically through work. And being that I'm in my mid-60s, it gets harder as we age to make sure that those hormones are working properly. And so my cortisol was actually a little bit reversed. Cortisol's in the sleep hormone camp. It's our rooster hormone. It wakes us up around 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's generated when the optic nerve carries the white-blue color spectrum of light into the pineal gland in our brain, and then through the endocrine system, gets a dump of cortisol coming out at 6, and it stays rapidly high so that we can go out and milk the cow and do all the things we need to for work. And then it starts to arch down after about 3 o'clock in the afternoon until it gets to its lowest point around 8 o'clock in the evening, when melatonin is peaking. So there's kind of one going down and one going up. And its job is to beckon us towards the bed. She was called Hypnos in Greek mythology. She makes us feel drowsy. And if we don't override her with a little sugar, it's her job to get us past insomnia and onto the pillow. Now, my hormones kind of flipped so that they weren't high in the morning when they should be, and they were higher in the afternoon. And if that happens for you because of stress, then you've got to get things realigned, because that can lead basically to insomnia. If your cortisol's higher in the evening when it's supposed to be its lowest, it'll override melatonin. Cortisol will pretty much trump all other hormones because it's our survival hormone. It generates fight, flight, and freeze. And so for our survival, we have these key hormones like adrenaline or epinephrine and cortisol that will shut down everything: digestion, immune function, sexual procreation, everything, to make sure that we can run away from the saber-toothed tiger. Does that make sense to everybody? Give me a thumbs up if you're following. Okay. Now, when women move into menopause and the sex hormones are starting to get produced right out of the adrenal glands where DHEA comes out, DHEA is on a teeter-totter with cortisol. If this is cortisol, when it goes up and stays up all day because of stress, all week and all month, and it's in a chronic up position, DHEA is chronically down. And that affects the production of the 3 estrogens, the progesterone, and the testosterone. So stress dramatically affects our stress hormones. And what happens for a lot of women in midlife is, if we're under constant stress, DHEA will be low for one thing, but the adrenals will actually steal progesterone and turn it into cortisol. And that puts estrogen and progesterone out of balance. And that makes estrogen levels go up with progesterone dropping and turning into cortisol. And that is one of the biggest causes of uterine and breast cancer. Okay, did everyone get that? Okay. We highly recommend getting your hormones tested. You'll ideally want to do, some people want in, Alex, want to do a test that tests at least 5 times across a circadian day. First thing in the morning, right after breakfast, midday, after dinner, and right before bed. Some of them even do a 6th one if you wake up to pee in the middle of the night. 6th readings are checking the around the clock up and downness of our hormones, especially cortisol, DHEA, and melatonin, the sleep hormone. Then you can see if you're kind of backwards, or not enough progesterone is getting out to balance the estrogens because cortisol is too high constantly. You'll get a good picture across your day rather than going into the clinic and getting blood out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and only getting a reading against a algorithm across population of your age at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't tell you what's happening at 6 in the morning or 8 o'clock at night, which are very important timings for the movement of our hormones. You can get those urine tests or saliva tests typically through naturopathic doctors, integrated health clinics, or functional health clinics, where they have more than just an NP working, or an MD working. Okay. And if you're going to work with a naturopathic doctor, I would recommend making sure that your naturopath and your MD work together, because you want to know where you're at against the people of your same sex and your same age group, but then you also want to know your particular life around the clock in 24 hours. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So we've got the sex hormones, and women need testosterone, because testosterone is, with HGH, human growth hormone, and DHEA, are youth and activity hormones. There are growth hormones, and they're there to give us bone density, muscle mass, all the things we need that as we age continue to drop, because all of those hormones are dropping. And so we need to do different things with our lifestyle to help prop them back up. Like weight training builds human growth hormone if you go to momentary muscular failure. Making sure cortisol is down on a daily level through various behaviors like meditation or massage or yoga or doing something creative or petting your pet, doing different things to help you bring cortisol down in the afternoon through the evening. That'll help make sure that DHEA is up, your youth hormone. So testosterone, DHEA, and HGH are a cluster. They're very important to keep us engaging with not losing muscle, not losing bone density. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. Metabolism is a big one that can affect, it tends to affect women more than men. We got, I think, we got a question from Leslie. Leslie, do you want to ask a question?
No, I'm sorry. I thought I was raising my hand. I did not have the technology. So thank you. No. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
yes,
Okay,
you're
no, I'm
good.
fine. I'm fine. Thank you so much.
Okay, don't hesitate. And you
Okay,
can
thank
always
you.
shoot a chat, and then Alex will read out a question.
Thank you.
The thyroid is a gland that sits right here behind our Adam's apple, and it can have a couple of problems. If it's hypothyroid, it's you could call it like a governor in an engine that adjusts the revs or the RPMs of an engine. So for metabolism, it'll make us either have a fast, really effective metabolism or kind of a slow, sluggish. It's like putting fuel into your car and you've got a Porsche, but you put in low grade gasoline and it just kind of sluggishly drives. But if you put in the high octane gasoline, the Porsche will like take those corners like crazy. That's all run by the thyroid. The thyroid, like all of our hormones, are built with proteins and different essential, you could say, minerals and vitamins. And one of the essential for the thyroids, the T3s and T4s, are precursor thyroid hormone builders, is iodine. So if a person's iodine is low, that can affect the function of the thyroid, and that can lead to hypothyroidism, which is a slow, sluggish metabolism. So if you notice you're gaining weight and you just can't lose it, that can be an effect of thyroid. Okay, and if a hyperthyroid, so that's overly active, you can't put an ounce on you because you're revved like a teenager. You're just can't slow down. So that's another set of hormones that you would also want to make sure through your testing to see how your thyroid's doing. I mentioned that the sleep hormones are melatonin to get us into bed and cortisol to wake us up. So again, they have a rise and fall through the day, morning, and evening that are critical to make sure we get deep sleep. And if you're not getting deep sleep, that's going to be a big part, besides being about your behaviors that affect your hormones. It'll be about those hormones. So you can get your hormones checked, and then it's not necessary that you have to go start taking hormonal supplements. It may be, but always not necessary. Sometimes you adjust your diet. Sometimes you're missing some dietary components, like I mentioned, the iodine for your thyroid. So that's where, again, getting all of the hormones tested and then your minerals and vitamins tested will help you determine whether you're missing any minerals and vitamins. They're a building block specific for certain of the thyroids, or certain of the hormones, sorry. Does that make sense to everybody? So make sure it's both hormone and minerals and vitamins. Appetite hormones. If your sleep is poor, if you're sleeping chronically 6 hours or less a night, you will be producing the hormone ghrelin. It's an appetite hormone. It was meant for the winters before electricity to help us as the atmospheric light seasonally shifted. We would gain more appetite when we had to work hard in the spring through the fall and use all those calories to go hunt and gather and farm. And then when the winter came, and we slept more, leptin, our appetite suppressant hormone, was released so that we wouldn't eat all the food we stored, and we weren't doing anything, so we didn't need that extra appetite. So less sleep, more appetite. More sleep, less appetite. Okay? And it works for all of us that way. So gaining weight isn't a simple equation. It's never about just calories in and calories out. Because even cortisol for our survival is designed to take extra calories and store them primarily in the visceral cavity of our body. And they were stored there because fat is insulative, so that after the bounty of the autumn, all of the hunting and all the gathering was done and we gorged and celebrated, we would go into the winter with extra fattiness. All humanity did this, and that fat was insulative. so that when we are before central heat, able to have extra fat in our belly and our chest and around all of our organs to keep the core of our body warm enough so the blood that ran to the brain from the core stayed at the right temperature so the brain would function. So no matter how hard you work out, you can sometimes never lose that belly fat if your cortisol's up constantly under stress. It'll just keep filling your belly full of stored calories. And then if your metabolism is revved down because of your thyroid, you won't be able to burn as much just being normally active. And then if your appetite's changed because of your sleep and you're sleeping terribly, you're going to be hungry and unconsciously eating. And the research on ghrelin right now shows that our cravings go for the carb, fat, salt. Not only does our appetite go up, but what we choose to eat subconsciously goes to carb, fat, salt, which tend to be more calories than we use, and again, we're storing. Is that, everyone seen the link there? Okay. Our blood sugar is managed by the hormones insulin and glucagon. When we eat and the food comes through our digestive laboratory and comes out through those pipes into our bloodstream, insulin is released from the pancreas and it grabs a hold of molecules of glucose, that's what comes into our bloodstream after digestion, and takes it to three places. First, it'll take it to make sure the brain is operating. Got somebody else wanting in, Alex, thanks. And then it'll make sure that it's going to muscles if muscles are working. And lastly, if muscles aren't working, it takes it to the third location, which is the fat cell for storage for later. So what we do in terms of our appetite, how much we eat, how frequently we eat, whether we mix things like fiber and protein with carbs, all can affect insulin. And if we're not moving and we're sedentary, insulin keeps going to the muscles with a bunch of glucose, and the muscles say, "What? We're not doing anything. We don't need you." And they become insulin resistant. And that insulin resistance leads to type 2 diabetes. That's what type 2 diabetes is the lack of the cell to want to uptake the glucose from insulin. It just keeps saying, "No, no, not needing you right now." The other hormone is glucagon, and that's released when blood sugars are dropping and we need to convert fuel that's stored in the muscle and in the liver, glycogen, and convert that into glucose so that the brain can keep operating. It's also utilized when we need to convert fat into fuel. So when we're in a fat burning activity, the first thing we'll use is the blood sugar that's stored in the bloodstream that's active from our last meal. Then we'll utilize any glycogen that's stored in our muscles from the last workout, and then we'll use the fat. That's controlled by those two hormones. The last main group of hormones that I wanted to chat about are the mood hormones. Cortisol, being a survival hormone for stress, has a focusing, vigilant kind of mood generation. It makes us check all around us, make sure we're safe here, we're safe with you, we're safe, now. And it's keeping us kind of darting around, and it kind of makes us a little bit agitated and a little bit vigilant and also super focused. And we use it at work to be the most productive between 8 and 10 in the morning. That's when it's at its highest, from 6 till 10. And that focusing, vigilant capability that it gives us is necessary for us all. But after a day of that focusing and vigilant diligence and a little extra coffee or a little soda in the afternoon to kick it back up again, both of those things creating another cortisol release, and the staring at white-blue background light on the screens that we all look at, also generating more cortisol. By the time we get home at the end of the day, we can often be a little bit grumpy, a little bit edgy, a little bit short, a little bit burnt out, a little bit definitely exhausted. And often our willpower isn't that potent because we've spent it all through the day being inundated with 1,000 different texts and messages and emails and conversations, and we're baked, and we're often not feeling happy. And this is the time of day when we are most likely to succumb to want to do something to bring our mood back up, to bring more happiness, more pleasure, more joy, more peace. Typically, we're wired from the taste buds on our tongue, primarily the three: salt and sweet and umami. Umami means kind of, think of gravy and miso, it's basically fat. Those three taste buds are wired to the brain from birth, from mother's milk, to release three feel-good hormones: dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Those three feel-good hormones are what we want at the end of the day. We want to come home and kind of relax, have a little laugh, chill out, do something and feel happy because we've worked our butts off. And that's why we go for wine and guacamole, or we go for pretzels, or we go for even Haagen-Dazs after dinner's over, or whatever it is. There's 1,000 ways that carb, fat, and salt have been layered over through the food industry to entice our tongue to release those feel-good hormones over our brain so that we don't have to be constantly on. That's the state that cortisol puts us in, constantly on. And you don't have to succumb all the time to the tongue. There's 5 or 6 things now that have been researched that can give you those same feel-good hormones without having to use your taste buds. Pet an animal for 5 minutes. Go into nature, go for a walk. Even as soon as you get home from commuting, these days you're home now anyways, get up from your office at home and go for a walk in nature. 20 minutes, if you're noticing what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you feel by the breeze or the sunlight. If you're integrated to your senses, 20 minutes. Hormones bathing you, but not only do they bathe you, cortisol drops. These 5 things I'm going to give you are cortisol droppers, which wine doesn't do. We just think it does, which ice cream doesn't do, or pizza. Those things don't lower cortisol. They just give us a momentary feeling of pleasure, happiness, but it's completely momentary. The third thing, you could get a massage, get touched for 20 minutes, tickle, wrestle with your grandchild. And the fourth thing, do something that unites your mind and your body in the present moment. That could be a little bit of yoga stretching. It could be rock climbing, but the more easier you make it, the more likely you're going to do it. And it could be some meditation and breathing exercise. Those things will also lower cortisol and bathe your brain with the same feel-good hormones. And then the fifth thing would be to do something creative, which could even be making your dinner, or a flower arrangement, or getting on the piano, or turning on the stereo and dancing. Do something creative for 20 minutes, same thing. You go into the flow state, you're in the present moment, cortisol drops, it doesn't believe you have to be vigilant about anything, and you get the feel-good hormones of dopamine, our reward addiction hormone, serotonin, our mood-enhancing hormone, and oxytocin, our bonding, feel-good social hormone. Is that understandable for everybody? Okay, let's have some questions then. Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll ask one.
Hey.
What do you think about I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's like homatonin. It's plant-based melatonin. There's an advantage to that.
Good question, Michelle. For hormonal supplementation, so say you go get your hormones tested and you're working with your MD and your ND and you realize that you need to make some adjustments, and then you're working on diet to give you some of the basics that you need to help build the hormones, and you're working on behavior so that you're not crushing the production of those hormones with cortisol constantly. Then if you're going to supplement, say melatonin, for example, we always recommend plant-based, because otherwise the hormones that we take are coming from pigs and cows and fetuses. So they're called bioidentical. And you can get bioidentical estrogens, any of the three. You can get bioidentical melatonin. And our recommendation is to start very, very low dosage and tease the body into self-production. Because sometimes if we overload with a supplement, the body just goes, okay, whatever. We're not going to worry about it coming from the pituitary or the thalamus or the thyroid or the adrenals. It's in the bloodstream. We'll just shut down. And you don't want that. You want to re-invoke those endocrine glands to be kick-starting production again.
Thank you.
Again, I'm not a doctor, but I can point you into some directions. The other thing, lastly, for Michelle about melatonin, the time of day that you want to take the hormones is important too. So melatonin supplements would be at 8 o'clock at night, not when you're in bed. Remember, it's a sleep beckoning hormone. And so it gets you ready between 8 and 10 to feel like a little drowsy, like a blood sugar drop. And then you want to go for the pillow.
So is that like 2 hours before bed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from anybody? Yes. Diane, go for it.
I'm not sure if I'm doing. You had mentioned when you do the home testing of your hormones, you would get the. I'm just going to say the word kit, where you take it 5 to 6 times in a day, and you would get that from a naturopath, not from your own medical doctor.
Typically, medical doctors, unless they're working in a functional medicine clinic or an integrated clinic where they're working with these more alternative ways of looking at things, usually recommend you go to the hospital, to the lab, and just take a blood sample, and you just go at a random time. So you're only going to get your picture at whatever time of day that you got the blood work. And that's why you could do that and do a urine test the 5 or 6 times in the day, and then you get a more circadian look at the rise and fall of your hormones, which we believe is very, very important.
Okay.
Because you could get 2 o'clock in the afternoon cortisol test, and it's going to show that it's low because it's naturally going low then, but it may show that it didn't tell you that it's low even at 6 in the morning for you, and that's why it's hard for you to get out of bed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense, Diane?
Oh yeah. No,
and then any naturopath that offers these kits, they all go to, there's only about 2 labs, I think, in North America that do the test, and you get a full readout of everything that comes back to you and to the naturopath, and then you have a session with them to go through and discuss what lifestyle things you want to adjust, or whether you want to adjust your diet a little bit or your supplementation to start building the hormones back up.
Okay, thanks. That's good to know. I got it now.
If you can't find a naturopath in your area, our naturopath at Mountain Trek, Dr. Kimberly, she works online all the time.
I'm in Kelowna, and so I know there are.
You should be able to find one in Kelowna for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Anybody else have any queries? Anything you want to share?
I just wanted to say, as someone who has been to Mountain Trek, but it's been a few years, a couple times, thank you. This is really excellent.
Oh, my pleasure,
Thank
Leslie.
you so much. It's really I look forward to more.
Great. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I second that.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys. Alex, did you get any questions into the chat before we wind up?
Yeah, we've got a couple here, Kirk.
Okay, great.
So the first would be, are you able to notice a difference in your hormones if you make some nutritional changes first prior to testing, or do you recommend going straight to testing and just cutting that step out?
For the cost, I would definitely get a test, and I would do a test probably every 5 to 10 years for sure. It's like $350, maximum $400 or something like that. And then what I started to do is you can start adjusting when you have your caffeine, or you start eating more types of food that get you iodine, for example, and then you start working on your sleep, and then you maybe take a supplement or two to kickstart either the gland that's emitting those hormones or the liver's ability to methylate the hormones, which is a way that hormones are basically recycled and reconstituted. So the body is so miraculously complex. And really, in the last 20 years, we've learned more about how all of these systems integrate and work together and how it affects the brain and the nervous system and the immune system than we've ever known for hundreds of years. And so, yes, I would do the test, and then I would work with a professional to advise me on some dietary and some behavioral adjustments, and maybe one or two supplements that could either help that particular gland if it's a little bit shy in production, or the liver that might need a little bit of help. And sometimes it can just be getting extra B vitamins to help bring cortisol down. So it's not super complex.
Mm-hmm.
You have another one, Alex?
Yeah, I do. What hormone imbalance would contribute to unwanted weight loss? Unwanted
weight loss is going to be probably to do with hyperthyroidism. So if the metabolism is so fast and so revved up that basically calories are just burned like crazy all the time. If it's not the thyroid, it's going to be something deeper, like some diseases and illnesses can cause that. So it's definitely worth checking out. Rapid weight loss is definitely a sign that something's out of whack. So I would definitely go see an MD and an ND on that one. Because again, and when we go to our medical doctors and they go for a thyroid test, they don't look at all three different thyroids as much. And again, it's a blood sample from one point in a day. And depending what your metabolism is doing to that circadian day, it may not give you the full picture. Whereas you get across the day what the thyroid hormones are doing, that relates to what the metabolism is required to do. You don't want your thyroid hormones high when you're trying to sleep, for example. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to put a link to Dr. Kimberly in the chat. She is Mountain Trek's naturopath. And if you want some more specific materials that she's created for Mountain Trek guests, please email me in the chat and I'll send that directly to you. She's put together a custom PDF just for Mountain Trek guests. So I can forward that on to you. And it details her testing regimen, as well as, I think, a special price for Mountain Trek guests.
Yeah.
And then, Kirk, in regards to finding another naturopath, maybe someone local, what's the best search? Is it online, have you found, or do you have
just like a good counseling therapist or a good hairdresser, I kind of go for referral. If you can, talk to friends or anybody else that's gone to one, because so much it's about the fit, the relationship, and that kind of thing. If you don't know anybody who's gone to an integrated clinic or a functional medicine working group or a naturopathic doctor, then I would go online. And then I'd read some reviews. Just like anything we do nowadays, like going to a restaurant, you might as well research what the feedback is about that service deliverer and then go from there. They need to be a doctor though, not just a naturopath. They have to be a naturopathic doctor. It's 7 years of school. Okay, it's not like a 2-year little college deal where you can hand out supplements.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Excellent. Any last requests for questions, or I'm getting some more chats about getting connected with Dr. Kimberly. Thank you. Please do put those in the chat before you sign off.
And again, I can't emphasize enough how really we're still learning about hormones. All research is still out, and it's still more and more information coming in. And it's worth looking at that if you have any concerns about any aspect of your health. I would always go to hormones first before disease, or at least together, because hormones run everything. Okay. And so knowing what's going on hormonally, if everything's in alignment, and then you're still having issues with health, then you want to start chasing potential illness. Okay.
Kirk, I have a question on the, assuming a daily healthy diet, do certain foods affect sleep negatively or positively? Like, are there certain things? I mean, I'm doing the mountain trek diet now.
Oh, good for you,
I'm
Simone.
starting to cook. I mean, I got my cheese pesto balls over there. I know, right? I know. It's all inspired through mountain trek.
Well, if you cortisol for over a third of the population, I mean, caffeine, chocolate, green tea, energy drinks, most sodas, and all types of white, green, or black tea, and coffee, even decaffeinated coffee, all have caffeine. And for over a third of the population, caffeine is a cortisol stimulant. So it usually takes 8 hours to lower it out of the bloodstream. So one of the things, if you're having an insomnia, the beginning of the night, difficulty falling asleep, just look to see if you're getting caffeine in any of your diet and make the last caffeine noon.
Yeah, I was wondering about the food specifically, though, not so much drinks, but food.
No, alcohol is another one. There's very little food. Tryptophan is kind of a thing. Magnesium-rich foods, also a thing that they say can support sleep. But if your minerals and vitamins are up at the normal level, then I wouldn't eat a bunch of cheese and crackers before bed. Again, you're going to just store it.
Yeah.
Anything you don't burn is stored, basically. So that's why at Mountain Trek, we're kind of hardcore and say, try to go to bed hungry. It's going to give you a better sleep. But alcohol conversion is another problem for sleep. It takes the liver basically 3 hours to convert the alcohol into acetate. It's a form of vinegar. So if we're drinking alcohol past dinner into the evening a little bit, that'll heat the liver up. It sits on the right side of your body, just into the right hip area. And that heat up of the liver basically will affect the depth of sleep. And it also means the liver isn't working on all of the other functions that it's supposed to be doing during deep non-REM sleep, which is most potent at the beginning of the night. So we recommend having a little glass of wine or something, and maybe as you're making dinner, and at the latest during dinner, and then follow up with just water. Teas, all herbal teas, have an effect on our systems. Water is the only benign thing. All plants have phenols in them, and all phenols can either be diuretic or stimulative, and they do different things. Even something simple like mint or licorice. Licorice is profound. So, so again, evening, taper off your alcohol, taper off plant teas, and try and just go with water. And if you don't like the flavor of water, just throw a slice of lemon or lime in. They're alkaline. They won't cause any negative effect.
Thank you so much.
No problem. My pleasure.
Kirk, I've got one more question for you, then I think we'll have to sign off for the night.
Yeah.
Again, if you do want to connect with our naturopath, please send your email to the chat and I'll introduce you privately. And then one other PSA, Kirk does offer a free 30-minute conversation. So if you do want to continue this offline, I'll also put that link into the chat now.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to talk with any of you about anything that you have questions about before you go to a naturopathic doctor, or any concerns you have about going to a naturopathic doctor, or even things you could try lifestyle-wise first before going. Open to having chat with any of you. Absolutely.
So the final question, and I'm interested in this as well. If you tend to wake up with sweats,
Yes.
What would that tell you hormonally?
Well, I would be looking at my thyroid for sure. I would be looking at my cortisol. And I would probably be looking at what's going on in my sleep. So you can, get an app and you can put it in your bed and just see through the night, it'll map how active you are in the bed, and that'll tell you whether you're going into deep REM, rapid eye movement, brain rewiring sleep, or deep non-REM, which is body rebuilding and immune function sleep. And so I would map my sleep and see, am I sweating all through the night? Or am I sweating just in a particular phase of sleep during the night? I'd also want to check, if I'm a woman with that question, my sex hormones. Because a lot of the imbalance during menopause that happens, like as you've all heard before with, the menopausal heating and sweating and those kinds of things, you want to check and see how your 3 estrogens are doing and your progesterone. So I would go for thyroid, sex hormones, and cortisol.
Great. Thank you, Kirk.
Pleasure.
Thanks everyone for joining tonight.
Thanks so much for coming, everybody. It's great to see you all.